Canadians are facing new challenges. Get the answers you need from the source you can trust. I'm Adrienne Arshaf, The National, Canada's newscast.
Pensions and stocks took a hit today. The first day of trading after yesterday's tariff announcement was a rocky one. CBC's Denise Bedard has been watching the reaction. And Denise, where did things close on the market today?
Apple and Nike.
The market is not really closed in a good place. Certainly there was a lot of red on all of the major stock indices in North America. If you take a look at where some of the big ones closed, the Toronto Stock Exchange closed down, the NASDAQ closed down, the Dow Jones in New York closed down, TSX in Toronto down 3.84%, the Dow in New York down 3.98%. NASDAQ is the one that really took a beating. That has a lot of the tech stocks in it. It was down 6%. And part of why some of the tech stocks, at least in theory, were going down is think of a company like Apple. It sells a lot of iPhones. iPhones, most of their parts are made in China. And those are getting hit with a gigantic tariff in some respects. More than 50% when you add in the new and the old tariffs that used to be there. So really, the markets were not in a good place at all today. One drop of green in all of these market indicators that we look at is the Canadian dollar. If you look at that, actually it went up a smidge. So Canadians might look at the loonie and say, oh, hey, this is going up. This is a good thing. 71 cents. It hasn't been that high in quite a while. This is actually not really reflective of anything specifically positive about the loonie or the Canadian dollar. This is more about the US dollar doing poorly, along with all of the other stock market and really financial indicators in the United States. They are not doing well, so sort of by proxy, not just the loonie, the euro, all sorts of other currencies look like they're doing better against the US dollar because it took a dive. But overall, if you had a lot of holdings in stock markets today, you may not have been very happy when closed, Ian.
I won't pretend to understand exchange rates, but we often hear people like you, business reporters, telling us that
They didn't think that things were going to be quite as bad as everyone was describing until Donald Trump made his announcement yesterday, and the markets this morning took a telling us, at least as a sort of bottom line wrap-up point, people who are putting money into the market in the United States right now don't think that they will have as much money in the future, and that's why we're seeing these markets go down today.
Okay, Denise, thank you for chatting with us.
You're welcome.
We're going to get some more analysis on what this means for Canada and the impact perhaps on the federal election. Our chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton, Response to Trump.
Well, I mean, he had already telegraphed that the president in this case, it's over $35 billion account on those things that the president thinks that's way right there. But more interesting, I thought, in his response today, given that we are in this election campaign, was actually saying that the two-court relationship between Canada and the United States is simply that relationship, the one that we relied on in the past, is over. And that what needs to happen now is a broader negotiation after this election between this prime minister or another one. He also sort of told Canadians that this is going to be done. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I don't believe that Trump is going to back down on his tariffs, even if they don't actually work the way you think they will. But there is going to be a long way ahead of the time sacrifices for the Canadian people. So it's in many ways a really blunt assessment of where we are at. I would feel like as a Canadian, it's not surprisingly during the midst of the election campaign, that the government was trying to support people. So all of the tariffs, the trade tariffs that are connected on the automobile sector, they were always being people using that, huge amount of anxiety. All of those tariffs, $8 billion, funneled back to that sector to help people through who knows what for who knows how long. The worst possible outcome, what the president did yesterday, but Mark Carney was quite clear-eyed, I think, in telling people what they should make of it and what will come next.
And let's pick up on something you touched on there, and that is that this response is happening in the middle of an election campaign, Rosie.
Yeah, I mean, for the second time now in the campaign, Mark Carney has stepped off the trail as the leader and into the office of Prime Minister to act because he needs to. Obviously, a response was required, but as you can well imagine, this is incredibly frustrating for opposition parties, particularly the Conservatives, who feel that they are at a disadvantage because Mark Carney
Oh my God.
the Prime Minister throughout all of this.
What is that?
In spite of that, Pierre
I'm
Poilievre,
working.
I thought pushed a little bit further on some of the ideas that the Conservatives would present if he were to become Prime Minister today, saying that.
I
he
thought you
would
gotta
go along with
exercise.
Donald Trump right away, that he would seek to pause the tariffs and to renegotiate CUSMA. And it seems today that
I thought
he
you
better
gotta
frame and
exercise,
have
honey.
some of his own policies to build up the Canadian
Boy,
economy.
what is
Could
this?
help deal with
I'm
Trump
working
going
here
forward.
and then.
But again, you know, having the mantle, the podium of the Prime Minister at your
I'll be back.
disposal when needed, because there is a responsibility
Oh
to
my
respond
God,
for
I
the
don't-
country,
that's
really
not
makes it
a good,
difficult for
you
the
know?
other opposition leaders. And it is, I think, Ian, why we are really seeing this race develop between the Liberals and the Conservatives, because they are, of course, the parties most likely to form government. We'll see whether Pierre Poilievre can get there, whether he can start to better tell Canadians why he is the person suited for the job versus Mark Carney and his previous resume. But this is really shaping up, I think, although people have lots of concerns, this is really shaping up to be the central ballot box question for Canada.
And a warning, Rosie, an unscripted third question here. Should we stick around for At Issue?
At Issue is very good. I hadn't talked to them since the call with the president last Friday, so they have lots of thoughts about what's going on with this race and where the weaknesses and the vulnerabilities are. One other thing, Ian, too, that is happening today is Radio-Canada, our friends at Radio-Canada are doing these live interviews with all the leaders tonight. That will also be a big test for Mark Carney. As you know, his French is not perfect, and we'll see how he does during that event tonight.
All right, well, it's always must-watch TV, but even more so tonight, Rosemary. Thank you very much. And of course, At Issue will be on the National, as you heard, Trump's tariffs, and this is no surprise, of course, will be the main topic. This is CBC News Network.
CBC News is your go-to this election. Use Vote Compass to find out which party is closest to your views, because this is your vote.
Thousands of Canadian businesses don't have access to the support they need. BDC is committed to opening the way. Breaking down doors for entrepreneurs. We're on it. BDC, financing, advising, know-how.
At A&W, we think we make Canada's best tasting burger. But what do Canada's burger lovers think? These are team burgers from A&W.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
How is it? And spell it. What do you know about our beef? Grass-fed. No steroids, no hormones, no duds. So of all the burgers in Canada, where would you rank this?
Top, definitely.
You know when you're a kid and you can't hold your excitement? Yeah. That's what this burger makes me feel like. Taste the team burger at A&W.
What kind of Canada do we want for our kids and our grandkids? I want a Canada that works for you. But Mark Carney spent his career hurting workers to make money for the powerful. He made life harder for families and easier for big corporations. And Pierre Poilievre, he wants us to be the US in everything but name. I want a Canada that works for you, where we fix our public health care, get your costs down. Let's protect our kind of Canada. That's worth fighting for.
Toyota takes you there. Don't miss out. Get in and go at your local Toyota dealer today.
I just love your show. Something breaks in here. Can you smell it? Oh my god, I know poison. Of course it's my boss. Look at me, Reed. Hello, Clarice. Do I need to throw a bucket of water on you?
Ontario is reporting 89 new measles cases over the last week. That brings the total to 661 since an outbreak began last fall. Public Health Ontario says there are currently 52 measles-related hospitalizations. That is 10 more than last week. The province also says that measles cases predominantly involve unvaccinated children in southwestern Ontario. The regions account for almost 45% of the province's cases. A new study has found the strongest evidence yet that a vaccination for shingles can cut the risk of dementia. Researchers tracked the health records of nearly 300,000 older adults in Wales. They found those who received Zostavax were 20% less likely to develop dementia within 7 years. Now, the study doesn't say this proves a causal link between the vaccine and the reduced dementia risk. For more on this study, we turn to Dr. Samir Gupta, joining us from Quebec City. And Dr. Gupta, this association between the shingles vaccine and reduced dementia, was this something we knew about before?
Well, Ian, it's long been theorized, and if you think about this virus, people will know this because it's the virus that causes chickenpox. So it's a varicella zoster virus, and you're a kid, you get chickenpox, you get sick, you get over it, but the virus actually stays with you, and it stays in a dormant form. And it lives in the central nervous system. And then years later, it comes back and it causes this shingles. But the fact that it lives in the central nervous system and that it's there for years led to theories that it might have some role to play in central nervous system diseases like dementia. So there have been studies showing that this virus, when it does reactivate, causes inflammation in the brain, damages blood vessels, causes protein accumulation, all the kinds of things we see with dementia. So people took that association and then they looked to see in other studies if people who had gotten this vaccine did have a lower chance of developing dementia. And there have been studies suggesting that people who tend to get the vaccine tend to have less dementia over time.
And so as you look through this, what's significant to you about this study?
Yeah, I think the reason there's discussion about the study and it's really in such an important journal is that it really is a different design. In previous studies, the concern was always that we could only compare people who had chosen to get the vaccine versus people who had chosen not to. And people who tend to get vaccinated tend to be healthier in other ways. They tend to eat better and exercise more. They're healthier in other ways that would also reduce their chances of getting dementia. So it was never entirely clear whether it was the vaccine. What's different here is that they take advantage of what's called a natural experiment. So what happened is they had this program in Wales where you were only eligible to get this vaccine if you were born after a certain date. So what they were able to do is to compare people born just 1 week before that date to people born 1 week after that date. And so the thinking here is that other than this program that was instituted, these two groups of people are actually very similar. And following these people out, they showed, similar to other studies, that there is a reduction. There's about a 20% relative risk reduction over 7 years of getting dementia if you got the vaccine.
And so for people, I mean, with a family history of dementia, or maybe even without a family history of dementia, what's the takeaway here? Should they get the vaccine?
Yeah, so it's a great vaccine, and my advice is for people 50 plus, and particularly 65 plus, get the vaccine to protect yourself from shingles, which can be a terrible disease in itself. This is an added bonus, Ian, and particularly if you have a family history, but even if not, there's a good enough reason to get this vaccine to begin with. This just gives us one more reason, and if you look at the data with this study now in the mix, this is becoming a really robust association. It really starts to be believable that this virus may play a role in people getting dementia.
So you have that robust correlation between the vaccine and dementia risk. You have the benefit of reducing your risk of getting shingles, and which can be very painful. Any downside in getting this vaccine?
The vaccine has very low side effect profile. It's been well studied, and many people have gotten it. Millions of people have gotten it. This study is actually done with a live attenuated virus vaccine that was used at that time in Wales. We actually have a newer vaccine, a recombinant vaccine now, Ian, that's even safer and even better and more effective. And there are other studies suggesting that this newer vaccine may be even better at protecting from dementia risk. So the vaccine we have now is actually very safe and very effective.
Well, I am in that age cohort, so I better get my act together and get the shot. Dr. Gupta, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian.
Coming up next, we'll break down how Trump's global tariffs may lead to rising prices here, at home, and beyond. Plus, we want to hear from you as the economic turmoil from the United States levies threatens to drive prices higher. Are you still buying Canadian? Is it costing you more? Let us know by emailing askcanada@cbc.ca. You are watching CBC News Network.
In this rapidly changing world, get the answers you need from the source you can trust. I'm Adrienne Erskine, The National, Canada's newscast.
At Wayfair, we get pretty excited about furniture. Around here, it's not a patio, it's a patio.
Oh, I love those chairs.
Shedtastic.
This rocks.
My queen.
Yeah?
Oh, I'm in the bed.
Girl, you nailed it! No, this set is just a couple of screws.
They're a perfect combo. They got a fire pit.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Gold standard, gold dust, bottle of gold, solid gold, golden opportunity. Is it just me or is there some kind of clue here?
At A&W, we think we make Canada's best tasting burger. But what do Canada's burger lovers think? These are teen burgers from A&W.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
How is it? And spell it. What do you know about our beef? Grass-fed. No steroids, no hormones, no duds. So of all the burgers in Canada, where would you rank this?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
You know when you're a kid and you can't hold your excitement?
Yeah.
That's what this burger makes me feel like.
Taste the teen burger at A&W.
Is this yours?
Yeah, Mom.
No, yes, okay. Well, give me it.
There's nothing like that first Mercedes feeling. Experience the feeling yourself at a local Mercedes-Benz dealer.
What binds us together is the Canadian promise that anyone from anywhere can do anything. That hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful house on a safe street, wrapped in the protective arms of a solid border defended by brave soldiers under a proud flag. To preserve that flag and its promise, we must work together, fight together, and win together. That is what it means to put Canada first.
BetMGM Casino has the most exciting live dealer tables. So when you want the magic of Vegas, you get the magic of Vegas. All the excitement of a player's paradise with live dealer blackjack, roulette, craps, baccarat, and more. Anytime, anywhere. Download BetMGM Casino.
Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum is striking an optimistic note in face of yesterday's tariff announcement. Both Mexico and Canada avoided new tariffs. Sheinbaum is chalking that up to what she calls a favored status.
It's very important to have a dialogue which is based on cooperation and collaboration with the United States and on mutual respect. This is what we saw yesterday in our preferential treatment. We are continuing to dialogue with the government of the US to improve the conditions for export of steel and aluminum, as well as cars, which should allow us to get a much better result.
Sheinbaum also expressed hope that more progress could be made on steel, aluminum, and auto tariffs.
It will be felt immediately.
Millions of citizens will face higher grocery bills, medication will cost more, as well as transportation. Inflation will go up, and this is hurting in particular the most vulnerable citizens.
The European Union is preparing countermeasures to Trump's tariffs. Ursula von der Leyen says last-ditch negotiations failed. The EU is hit with 20% duties. The French president, Emmanuel Macron, described Trump's global duties as fundamentally wrong. He is suggesting a pause on U.S. investments until the tariffs are clarified. It's not just governments preparing for a hit. With these tariffs piling up, Canadians could soon feel the impact in their wallets as well. Sarah has been looking at whether signs of sticker shock are already starting to show.
Well, let's start with cars, because the tariffs are not only going to affect the industry, but the actual vehicles that people are or are maybe not buying right now. And we are seeing hesitation and also, in some cases, ending sprees, and people try to buy up what might be in stock right now. But analysts on both sides of the border, as well as sellers, are predicting that you're going to start to see those prices of cars go up in more than $1,000 to the more than $15,000 for that vehicle, depending on where it is actually coming from. But it's pretty much agreed upon that you're going to see it on both sides of the borders, America and Canada. We did talk to a dealer outside of Toronto in Mississauga who said that right now it's a bit of a holding pattern, hesitation on the part of buyers, as they're not exactly sure where things are going, where prices are going, and don't want to spend that money at the moment. Take a listen.
Still a 90-day supply of cars out there that are untapped, but certainly there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of angst amongst myself and all my dealers, and I had to calm my employees down today at company lunch and just let them know that it could prove no matter what.
Certainly, that's of course a dealer in Pennsylvania, and what he's talking about there is that they have this non-tariff supply that people are in some cases wanting to pick up on that. That non-tariff supply applies to all products. In particular, when you talk about produce, you're going to see that non-tariff supply, run out perhaps the quickest. Produce only lasts for so long, and so that's where you're likely to see the prices increasing. Let's talk about coffee. Coffee being a food product, the one that is the green bean brought into the United States from other countries that are now facing tariffs. Colombia, Guatemala, even Vietnam was a particularly high tariff. If that green bean is brought into the United States and it is roasted in the United States, and you're a Canadian who likes that American brand, then you are likely looking at a significant increase in what you're going to be paying, because that's going to cross the border, that rising cost into Canada. And to that, I was talking again actually to a U.S. importer who actually imports kite surfing gear into the United States. So we're talking about kites and wings. It's a pretty niche market here. They come from Sri Lanka. Over the last couple of months, they've actually pledged for their clients to buy the wings from these friends of me. They're looking at about a 45% increase in the price of, they look at the island, they look at $400, and the price is going to go up substantially now. Because they look at the companies will be able to shape the distribute to their stores, and that's the thing where it has to distribute to Canada. So the carbon tax has gone away. We heard a bit of that relief at the pump in the listen.
There's a lot of doubt happening there, and we see it. I mean, we ask many people, what do you want to do with this? We're sitting on a holding pattern. That's what we're hearing.
Sorry, that's the deal who's outside of Mississauga, or rather in Mississauga outside of Toronto, and talking about people holding off.
Very clever of you to remind our audience this is a live television show.
Yeah.
That we don't expect. We're going to be talking to you again next hour, maybe about gas prices in Dawson City.
Yeah, and asking people, are they going to continue to buy Canadian?
Okay, all right. Sarah, thank you very much. You may have heard Richard Madden reporting earlier on the countries and territories targeted by Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs, places like Christmas Island, Cocos Island, and Bird Island. Well, we're going to speak to two Canadians in Norfolk Island, tiny Australian territory in the South Pacific. It will be a live conversation. We've already talked to them Conversations coming up right here.
So, you want to watch the CBC News streaming channel? You can, wherever and whenever you want. Here's how to find us. We're on the CBC News app, on CBC Gem, and on your smart TV. Stream anytime, it's always free. CBC News.
Good morning with Gocalax.
Good morning.
Gocalax
Morning.
works naturally with your body for overnight occasional constipation relief, making your good morning even better with Gocalax.
Morning.
Gocalax helps you in liquid.
Yes, I do remember.
Retirement doesn't have to mean giving something up. It should mean living life on your own terms. Well, thankfully, if you're a Canadian homeowner, age 55 and better, you can access some
Morning.
free cash with CHIP. That way, you can live retirement on your own terms. Stay in the home and the neighborhood that you love. Because there's no place like home.
No place like home.
If you're 55 or older, call now for your free no-obligation CHIP reverse mortgage guide. With CHIP, you can get up to 55% of your home value in tax-free cash. Regarding what you need in a lump sum or over time with no monthly mortgage payments required. Call 1-866-562-2447.
Maybe it's time for you to consider CHIP too.
Call now for your free no-obligation guide. Call 1-866-562-2447. That's 1-866-562-CHIP. Or visit chip.ca. Call CHIP today and live retirement your way.
Limits aren't there to stop us. They're there to challenge us, test us. So when we push past those limits, we discover how far we can really go. The Jeep No Limits event is back. Get up to $8,800 in total incentives on Jeep Wrangler, or up to $6,700 in total incentives on Jeep Grand Cherokee, or lease a Jeep Compass North for $99 a week for 54 months, with $2,095 down, 2.49%, 4.06% APR. Jeep, there's only one.
Nobody's marinating their chicken in Cajun seasonings for hours and hours. Nobody's hand-breading every piece of love. Nobody's adding roasted garlic aioli and cheese to their classic chicken sandwich. Nobody but us.
The claims period for 2 classes in the First Nations Child and Family Services and Women's Principal Settlement is now open.
First Nations children who were removed from their homes on reserve between April 1st, 1991 and March 31st, 2022, and their caregiving parents and caregiving grandparents can now submit a claim for compensation.
There are free supports to help you fill out your form.
And mental health and wellness supports if you need them.
Learn more and submit your claim at fmchildclaims.ca.
This is severe weather. It's getting worse in Canada, and we are all paying the price. But this is what protecting Canadians from the impact of severe weather looks like. The 140,000 people in our home, auto, and business insurance industry working in your community, advocating for solutions that protect all Canadians. All for our plan to protect the things we love.
You are finally here. I'm calling you up.
World leaders are vowing to retaliate after global stocks plummeted. But Donald Trump, he's standing firm. We'll look at all of that and how Canada is reacting to the global trade war. I'm Ian Hanomansing. Hour 2 of our show is live from Vancouver.
The President's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world. We must respond with both purpose and force.
The fallout from both sides of the border and a closer look at one of the hardest hit industries.
There was the final nail in the coffin, as the union members told us.
Stellantis announces it's temporarily shutting down its Windsor assembly plant, affecting thousands of workers. Also tonight.
No, we're seeing the market down further today on this announcement because it was a lot more than expected.
With stocks in a tailspin, a market strategist joins us to discuss the implications for Canadian investors. We'll be looking at tariffs from all angles this hour, and Karina Roman begins our coverage from Ottawa with more on what Mark Carney is saying.
So Mark Carney this morning told Canadians what the country's response was going to be to the latest
on the tariffs. Now, yes, it's clear that Canada is not subject to the reciprocal tariffs that Donald Trump was talking about yesterday, but the other tariffs that had been previously put on Canada still exist, and of course the auto tariffs came in overnight. And so Canada's response is really, today at least, is very much towards those auto tariffs. So Canada will match the U.S. tariffs on autos, 25% on all vehicles imported from the U.S. that are not compliant with CUSMA. Also 25% on the non-Canadian content of the CUSMA compliant vehicles. These tariffs are not meant to affect auto parts because there's a recognition of how integrated that production system is. They're not meant to affect parts and content from Mexico. And there is work being done on how to help auto producers avoid the counter tariffs if they maintain their investment and their production here in Canada. So today's tariffs amount to $35.6 billion worth of goods that are being tariffed in this move. That's on top of the $60 billion already worth of tariffs that were put on the U.S. on U.S. goods coming into Canada previously. Those tariffs remain. All the raised through these tariffs will be spent back on workers, auto workers in particular, but and also businesses affected. And Mark Carney said that Canada is challenging the U.S. tariffs in court and at the World Trade Organization. So today Mark Carney elaborated on what he meant when he said that the relationship between Canada and the U.S. as we knew it is over. He talked about how that is a tragedy but a new reality, and he was asked directly whether the U.S. is still an ally. Have a listen.
The U.S. is absolutely our ally. It's our ally in security and defense partnerships. It's most important security allies, for example, still, even with these tariffs, the largest trading partner. The point I made last week, the point I made again today, is part of what our relationship has been based on. There has been a degree of integration between our economies, our trade becoming closer and closer together. That is over. I mean, we saw the problems ending a while ago. It's now emphatic. I think the world is learning that that is over.
Carney also was asked whether or not Canada would be headed for a recession, and if so, how soon. He said that, well, he expects that to happen to the U.S. with this approach, and of course we know from history that often, more often than not, when the U.S. goes into recession, so does Canada. But we have avoided it before, most notably during the 2008 financial crisis. He says we can't avoid it again. He talked about all the measures being put in place in terms of the promise to build domestically, to bring down internal trade barriers, to support workers and businesses during this tough time, that it's mitigating the slowdown in Canada, and perhaps Canada can fare better than the U.S.
CBC's Karina Bowman in Ottawa. We also heard from Conservative leader Poilievre. He spoke before Carney's announcement, and Poilievre is questioning the productivity of the call between Carney and Trump last week, given the sort of still in place. U.S. markets saw their steepest declines in 5 years today. Global trade was upended because of Donald Trump's tariff plans. CBC's Richard Madden is in Washington and tells us how all of this is playing out for us.
Well, the White House is downplaying this fall, but rushing off with taking markets and the warnings of inflationary price hikes and concerns of a possible recession ignited by Trump's own tariff and trade war. Instead, Trump compared his aggressive tariff strategy that slapped tariffs on almost every country in the world as an urgent medical surgery that needed to be done. Take a listen to what President Trump said. That's an unusual comparison, but his administration is sure there may be short-term gain for long-term prosperity, and they're portraying Trump as a warrior for targeting America's biggest offenders who they say are ripping off the U.S., hitting China, the European Union, and South with retaliatory tariffs. Now, the White House says
No.
Trump is digging in, and what they believe is the start of a massive realignment in global trade, and the world, they say, simply needs to trust the president. Watch.
Let Donald Trump run the global economy. He knows what he's doing. He's been talking about it for 35 years.
Thank
We
you
got
so
to
much
trust
for
Donald
coming.
Trump in the White House. That's why we put him there. Our markets are going to be up. And I understand that it's tough for the global markets. But our market, you should be betting on Donald Trump in the United States market. We are going to do much, much better.
So in the meantime, we are not seeing the markets do better. They're reacting to these tariffs and in some cases forecasting troubles ahead. We're seeing shares of luxury brands from watches to jewelry are down, while shares of fast food chains are up as investors
Carrots?
consumers will soon opt for
Yogurt.
cheaper meal options as the
You want
next
that?
stage of Trump's
Honey, is it
proposal
good?
trade and tariff war affect their
That's
spending. But now that the dust has
Very
settled from
good.
Trump's announcement, Ian, is worth taking a deeper look at some of the countries listed in Trump's 8-page handout because they're raising a few eyebrows to say the least. I'm gonna show you just a few of them. I mean, for example, here you've got the British Indian Ocean Territory. That's an uninhabited island.
I think I'm gonna
We're
eat some
slapped
kind
by
of
10%
cheeses
tariff.
tonight.
There's also the
No cheese
Irvine
this
and
week.
McDonald Islands,
Yep.
also
Yeah, in a while. You.
including Australia and Antarctica. That's
I think I
been
deserve
by
the
10%
cheeses
tariffs.
tonight because I felt my
Maybe a few penguins.
I felt my
There's also
summer.
Christmas Island, here's another one. That's another territory near Australia and Antarctica hit by a 10% tariff and so forth. And all this, of course, prompted a bit of a crack from Australia's Prime Minister who said, nowhere on earth is safe from these tariffs.
Yeah, there's an absurdity to all of this, Richard, but at the same time, dead serious consequences for places that have actual humans as opposed to penguins on it. And so let's take a look at pushback to the extent there is pushback in the United States, in particular in the Senate.
Yeah, this is one of the more fascinating developments. It's on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue on Capitol Hill. We're starting to see the first cracks in the party as more Republicans are publicly breaking from Trump's agenda. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, who also heads the Senate Finance Committee, introduced a bill that would block Trump from imposing more tariffs without getting congressional approval first. And this bill follows the 4 Senate Republicans who joined Democrats yesterday calling to end tariffs on Canada by lifting Trump's emergency declaration on the northern border linked to fentanyl smuggling that Trump used to justify those tariffs in the first place. Now, one of those rebel Republicans is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who said history shows that tariffs have led to his own party's decimation at the ballot box, and he didn't mince words when he warned his fellow Republicans. Listen to this.
Tariffs have also led to political decimation. McKinley, most famously put tariffs on in 1890. They lost 50% of their seats in the next election. Knox really put on a tariff in the early 1930s. They lost the House and the Senate for 60 years. So they're not only bad economically, they're bad politically.
So what's also fascinating here is that tariffs have also united Democrats. Now, this is a party that's been leaderless. They've been having troubles landing a coherent message, but they're now flexing their opposition to these tariffs and making it a key issue in their home districts, saying consumers will suffer and Republicans will be punished. Listen to this.
I think when voters understand that this means north of $3,000 more in family costs every year, when they look at their pension fund plummet, when they see Medicaid being pulled out from under them, when they look at what happened to their homeowner's insurance bill and their problems getting mortgages in weather-hit areas, I think what we're going to see is an enormous correction politically because of the enormous damage economically that Trump is inflicting on America. I mean, I think it's time for Republicans to look at each other and say, hey, Houston, we have a problem.
Now, many here are calling this Trump's biggest gamble of his presidency with huge economic and political consequences. But the White House believes these tariffs will eventually work out, bringing back manufacturing and jobs to the U.S. They also reject any criticism that they might be wrong.
Wow. Really?
Terrific job as always. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Last year,
This may be a
we only
first
went
ever
for
for
Barbados,
CBC News
right?
Network. We have a live
We just
interview
went out
from
like
Norfolk
that.
Island. The external
Now they're saying
territory of
it's dangerous to go
Australia is 1,000 kilometers east of Sydney. It
I
has a
put it on my
population
travel
of
information because I
2,000
need
people.
that.
and it now faces a 29% tariff on Trump. That's 19 percentage points higher than the rest of Australia. A Norfolk official says the island doesn't export anything to the United States.
Last year?
So for our next guest, the news first started as confusing, then it seemed kind of funny, but then there was a twist, and you'll see why in just a moment. Jesse Schiller and Rachel Evans live on Norfolk Island. They're Canadians. They run a business called Kushu, making hair accessories, and they join us now. What was your reaction when you found out that your island, Norfolk, was on Trump's tariff list?
As you said, it was confusion at first. You know, we're used to being pretty anonymous down here in the middle of the South Pacific. That kind of flowed to concern, just concern that perhaps there is a business on Norfolk that we weren't aware of that's exporting.
That's this year.
February 1.
Wow.
This is yours, there's no such business.
Yeah.
And then, you know, a little bit of, humor, almost like a gallows humor, which I think Norfolk Islanders are good for, is kind of laughing at the absurdity of it all.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw these questions out, and you can decide between the two of you who wants to jump in and answer them. And so my next question is, tell me a little bit more about the conversations at the coffee shop, presuming you have a coffee shop on Norfolk Island, the conversations that have been going on today.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we have some wonderful coffee shops. Norfolk is a tourism economy, so
But a great place to catch up is actually the beach.
Yes.
So that's even better.
So we had a pretty good conversation down the beach yesterday, and yeah, it was very much what we said. I mean, Rachel and I are maybe slightly differently attuned because we run a small business that is very much global in the way it operates. But locally, for those certainly that aren't kind of dealing on a day-to-day basis with the U.S. or otherwise, it was kind of topical. I think in us, Sean, our bit is, we're a small island. It's a very special place to visit the tourism economy, and we've landed in the news all around the world, which is great for the economy. Those pictures of these beautiful South Pacific beaches. So there's kind of a very surprising twist to that story.
Yeah, well, speaking of surprising twists, you realize that your business is going to be impacted, and so explain how.
So we're very global. We're very small but global. So we're headquartered here on Norfolk Island, yet we manufacture in territories in India and Japan, and our major are in the USA, so Whole Foods market. We manufactured in the US for 8 years. We were incorporated in Canada. We did that for a long time, and it just wasn't, with hair accessories, there's a cap to what people will pay when you head into the couture kind of line. But customers weren't willing to pay what it takes to make a product in the USA. So we had to look abroad, and that's where we're so proud to have wonderful fair trade partners. But yeah, so we had the news on Norfolk about the tariff. We're like, oh, phew, we dodged that bullet. We got a nice silver lining with tourism for the island. But then, of course, we went on to be like, oh my goodness, look at the tariffs that we've just been hit in Japan and in India. So this morning has definitely been a morning of just trying to get our head around it and figure out kind of next steps and how we speak to our wonderful partners in the U.S. Like, yeah, Whole Foods, but we're talking about and many other wonderful organic
Small businesses. Yeah.
All around the world. So, but yeah, we're definitely feeling it on many different angles.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about the price considerations, because a lot of U.S. retailers, including Whole Foods, are committed to their customers to try to get prices as low as they can. So on manufacturers, there's a pressure to get the unit cost as low as you can. Now, you both have connections to Canada, and I think at one point you did try to make a go, if I'm correct, of manufacturing in North America. Why didn't you keep doing that?
Yeah, well, we wanted to originally manufacture in Canada, and as is fairly well known, there's a very small textile industry left in Canada, mostly out east of Montreal. We were based in Vancouver. LA was 3 hours away. It was a bit more of a manufacturing hub. Also, there's as many people in California as in Canada, so we wanted to be close to that.
And we wanted to keep our carbon footprint for the containers, right, and shipping all of those things.
So we manufactured there for 8 years. We really tried to make ourselves competitive. We started getting interest from bigger customers like Free People, Whole But what they were very clear about, like you said, Ian, is that they have kind of price caps on what they're willing to pay and what consumers in general are willing to pay for hair accessories. And we, to the best of our ability, we were never going to be able to do that. And so we decided to offshore and do it very, very consciously, while continuing to be very good stewards and partners to all of our customers across the US and Canada. And yeah, it's in terms of like what it means to, you know, we've been scrambling and talking to our head of sales, we were just on a call with them, talking about, well, how do we translate this? I mean, the reality is it's 26% from India, 4% from Japan. You know, on our cost basis, it doesn't feel like a lot, but it amplifies to our supply chain, and it equates to multiple dollars that we likely raise prices. I mean, I know some proponents in the US are saying, oh, the small businesses and businesses are just going to absorb the cost, but our margins just not built for that. Like, we are a small business, and it's already been an incredibly challenging time for 24 months. Small businesses, we just started to see some headway. We felt like things were turning, and now to have this, it's just, I mean, it's dispiriting. We're optimistic people. We're going to see the bright side. That's what we're at.
To add to that, the economy was really having a hard time. They'd already gone to our Whole Foods said, this is the price you need to get it. Like, I'm 10 US to get it. Or thank you, so transparent. Went back to our cotton suppliers, our manufacturer, our freight, our packaging. We got everything down as slim as we could to meet that margin. So that's where we are now. We are as slim as we can be. So the cost is going to have to go on to the customer in some way. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rachel, maybe last word to you. What a 24 hours from finding out about these tariffs on Norfolk Island, kind of laughing at the absurdity of it, because as we heard, there may not be any actual exports from Norfolk to the United States, then realizing that your manufactured goods from Asia are going to be facing a tariff into the United States, and now uncertain about the future. So as I say, Rachel, and both of you, for people who are just tuning in, have connections to Canada. Last word to you, Rachel, about where things stand tonight.
Yeah, you know, being in business for like 15 years, pivoting is it's a roller coaster ride no matter what. So this, I'm happy to have a smile on my face because it's the only way to go through. And we're not alone. We're all affected. So I really think it's about coming together with your partners, with your suppliers, with your competitors, and just figuring out how can we find the bridge to get through this time. Yeah.
And supporting small businesses. I think that's a big part too.
That is big. As you said, customers are running in to go to McDonald's to find cheap food, but the thing is, like, we're offering a premium product. You don't want the really good quality things that are available to you to no longer be available because they go out of business. So, yeah, still mindfulness when you do spend your money.
There's so much that's fascinating about your story, and I'm so happy that you're able to share it with us. Thank you very much for speaking with the CBC.
Oh, such a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Jesse Schiller and Rachel Evans are Canadians living on Norfolk Island, and they run a business called Kushu. When Donald Trump first threatened this country with tariffs and annexation, many people made the decision to buy Canadian. But as the economic turnout from U.S. levies threatens to drive prices higher, we'd like to hear from you. Are you still buying Canadian, and is it costing you more? Please email us, askcanada@cbc.ca. We're live on CBC News Network.
Toyota takes you there. Don't miss out. Get in and go at your local Toyota dealer today.
For decades in Canada, Liberals and Conservatives have been trading power in Ottawa, and life keeps getting harder for you. This time, stop the revolving door. Vote NDP and put working people in charge.
I worry about my rivets, not my ratings.
Tim's Donut and Coffee is the original collab. And now buy any size original or dark roast coffee and get a classic donut for $1. An iconic deal on the iconic duo with the Tim's Dollar Donut. Order on the Tim's app today. It's time for Tim's.
Good players know how to play. Great players know when to stop.
Keep it a game. Always play responsibly. It's Nano.
Every week, the issues that matter to Canadians, connecting politics to people.
Canada is not for sale. This will be America's new golden age.
Sundays, join me for Rosemary Garden Walk.
Auto tariffs are already having an impact here in Canada. The Stellantis plant in Windsor announced it's temporarily shutting down for 2 weeks. Chrysler vans and Dodge cars are produced there. The CBC's Jennifer Lagrassa has more reaction from auto workers.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of uncertainty and unease today in the city. Thousands of people in this region work for Stellantis' Windsor assembly plant. And, late last night, about 3,200 of the workers for that company learned that as of Monday, that would be, their last shift for a few weeks.
It's been a pretty dismal experience today, with mass layoffs. This is just the start of it, it's gonna be like an infection through the entire city.
It's a little scary because, it could be 2 weeks, could be 2 months, who knows, as long as the orange man keeps the tariffs on, right? But it's scary, that's for sure.
And everybody's worried about this, and we can't make any move in our lives. We are very worried. We can't even, we're even able to put on the table.
So Stellantis says that, production at that plant will be paused for 2 weeks, saying the main driver is U.S. President Donald Trump's 25% auto tariff. Now, the leader of the union, the auto union here in Windsor, spoke with CBC News a little bit earlier and said, being a border city like Windsor, we're so deeply tied to the United States, so all of this feels personal.
Have to keep working to resolving the issues with the United States. We can say, and I can sit here and scream from the top of my lungs that it's unjust, but at the end of the day, that's the government we're dealing with in the United States, and we have to find ways to eliminate these tariffs.
So to put this into perspective, those 3,200 jobs at the assembly plant are really just the tip of the iceberg. There's about 8 times that could be impacted, and that would be jobs at smaller plants or companies that provide parts to the Windsor assembly plant. So the union here is saying, it could impact up to 25,000 jobs. So speaking in Ottawa today, as Prime Minister, we know Mark Carney stood in solidarity with Stellantis workers, and he did announce those retaliatory tariffs against the United States.
Our tariffs, though, unlike the U.S. tariffs, will not affect auto parts because we know the benefits of our integrated production system. And they will also not affect vehicle content from Mexico, who is respecting the CUSMA agreement. And as well, we are developing a framework for auto producers in Canada to get relief from these counter tariffs as long as they maintain their production and investment in our country.
Jennifer, we can see the Detroit skyline behind you, and so let me ask you, on top of the pause of Windsor's plant, we know there's also an impact on jobs in the United States. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so Stellantis is saying that because of the pause at some of its Canadian and Mexican plants, that is impacting several facilities in the United States. So they said that there would be 900 layoffs at nearby plants that feed parts again to Stellantis' assembly plants. And in a statement to CBC News today, they said that Stellantis continues to assess the effects of the recently announced U.S. tariffs on imported vehicles and will continue to engage with the U.S. administration on these policy changes. Now, as for what's next for Windsor's assembly plant, Stellantis says that, it expects to be back up and running the week of April 21st, but many are skeptical about that. And what's important to note with this is that while Stellantis and the local
That's good, this is no problem. I've been doing this for many times at work.
Tariffs, we heard from the union
Doing my
in the
live
United
stream.
States who's actually blaming the company. So in a statement today, they said that these layoffs are really an unnecessary choice
right, Jennifer, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Markets nosedive today after Trump's tariffs. Why investors are bracing for impact. We'll get a chief market strategist to explain the numbers for us.
Thank you, guys.
You're watching CBC News Network.
CBC News is here for Canadians.